1 second. I'm not ready. Aya, turn that light on. And in that light out there. No, the main light.
Your light, you're on.
All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Aya, the foyer light. All right. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعه إلى يوم الدين. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Alhamdulillah, it's great to see you all. Inshallah, for another episode of a journey through the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a journey through the Seerah. And if you remember, we met on Friday, and on Friday we spoke about the first revelation of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this was just to kind of give you a refresher. He was going and he was in Ghar Hira, and he would go into the cave in the mountains, and he would go and contemplate. And he was there for some time, and then one day he felt a squeeze, and he was told, "Iqra, read." And he said, "I'm not one who knows how to read. I don't read. I'm not a reader." And he got squeezed again, and then the verses were revealed to him. اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. And he ran back to Khadija radhiyallahu anha, and he said, "I don't know what it is. It might be something evil." And she said, "No, it couldn't be something evil, because you take care of the orphan, you feed the needy, you're good with your guests, and all of these good qualities that he had." She said it couldn't be something evil, but let me take you to someone who would know what it is. And she took him to Waraq ibn Nawfal. And if you remember, we ended last time when Waraq ibn Nawfal told the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, this was the one who came to Musa alayhi salam. This was an angel, the keeper of the secrets. And he said to him, "How I wish I was a young and strong man now, so that when your people fight you and kick you out of your land, that I would stand by your side and aid you with a great victory." And the Prophet ﷺ said, "My own people would fight me and kick me out of my land?" And he told him, he said, "Yes, never has anyone come with what you're coming with, except that his people rejected him and fought him and tried to kill him. And your people are going to do the same thing to you." So that's where we left off last time. So obviously the Seerah is very vast, and there's a lot to the Seerah in the 23 years of the prophethood. There's so much to it. And we're just taking small glimpses of some of the incidences that happened during the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that was the first incident. We spoke about the first revelation. The second thing we're going to talk about today is the fulfillment of this prediction of Waraq ibn Nawfal. So he told him that things are going to be very difficult. They're going to fight you. They're going to kick you out of your land. They're going to try to kill you. Your people are going to do that same thing to you. And so here we are today. We want to talk about what is known as the Great Boycott, or the Boycott. And so what happened was, the first few years of Islam, of the da'wah, after this, the Prophet ﷺ, he told people about Islam in private settings. So he told his family and those who were very close to him. And it was done in private, and for the most part, people left him alone. And then Islam started to spread a little bit. Some people started accepting Islam. More people who were outside of his immediate family started accepting Islam. And one of the major, or two actually, of the major people who accepted Islam that gave the Muslims strength during this time were two very strong and powerful people. One of them was Hamza radiallahu anhu, and the other one was Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. And so Hamza was, at the time, he was like the most senior of all the people who had accepted Islam. Obviously, this was a very tribal time. And so within these tribes, they had seniority. So Hamza radiallahu anhu was he was the most senior people who accepted Islam. And the way he accepted Islam, at first he blurted it out of anger because he didn't like the way they disrespected his nephew. Hamza was the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ. And he said that I'm also a Muslim, so what are you going to do about it? And then he said it without much thought. And afterwards, he realized what he had said, and he went and he made dua. He said, "Oh Allah, if this is true, then make it firm in my heart." And he went and talked to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ told him about Islam, and then he realized that this was the truth. And so he was a strong advocate, him and Umar radiallahu anhu. And I'm not going to get into their stories today. We don't have a lot of time for that. Beautiful story about how Umar radiallahu anhu also accepted Islam. But the point is, they became so strong after they became Muslims that they were able to go out and teach people about Islam in public. And so now some time passed and people started coming into Islam and the da'wah started growing. And the people of Quraysh started getting concerned about the spread of this new thing, this new religion. So the Qurayshi tribes, they got together and they started to discuss what is it that they could do to get rid of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and to stop this religion from spreading. And they thought to themselves and they said that we need to, as Waraq ibn Nawfal said, we need to kill Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So then they said that they're going to offer any amount of money to the tribe of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to the Banu Hashim, and they would offer them any type of blood money they would want if they would hand over the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so they went to they went to one of their leaders, Abu Talib, the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And they said to Abu Talib, they gave him an ultimatum. And they said, either you're going to hand over Muhammad, and in that case, we're going to give you whatever blood money you want, whatever wealth, whatever money you want, we're going to give it to you. Or you're going to be completely cut off from the Quraysh. This had never, ever been done before. It's a very tribal society. And it's blood ties that they have. And they said, you're going to be completely cut off. And so Abu Talib became very angry. He became very angry. And he told them that none of you are going to touch my nephew. They said that they weren't going to, they're going to boycott them. And they're not going to allow them to get any food or trade with anybody or marry their sons or daughters. And if people are married within their tribes, they have to divorce them. No one is going to buy anything from you or sell you anything. You're going to starve. You're not going to have food. And when they told this to Abu Talib, he said, do whatever you please. I'm not going to hand over my nephew to you. He became very angry at them. And then he said that if you're going to treat us in this way, then we're going to leave. And so they moved to another valley just outside of Mecca. And so this was the Banu Hashim, the tribe of the Prophet ﷺ, and the Banu Muttalib. And so the Quraysh, then they came together and they wrote up a treaty. And this was a treaty for everyone to follow, an agreement for everyone to follow. They said no one is going to buy or sell to the Banu Hashim, to the tribe of the Prophet ﷺ. No one is going to marry within them. No one will even socialize with them. They're going to be cut off completely from society. So they took this treaty that they wrote and they went inside the Kaaba and they hung this treaty in the Kaaba and they locked it up. The Kaaba, nobody goes inside the Kaaba. So they went inside, they put it and they posted it in, and then they locked it up inside the Kaaba. So this time of the boycott, now this lasted for maybe 2 or 3 years. There's not a whole lot that's narrated about this time of the boycott, but it was some very bad memories for them. Maybe they didn't share them. Maybe they didn't want to talk about the bad times they had. Maybe they suppressed the bad times that they had. So there's not a whole lot about them, but it lasted 2 or 3 years. And during these years, they just tried to survive. It was very traumatic for them. They would drink whatever rainwater they could get. They would eat the leaves off the trees to try to just eat something. Once every few weeks, someone would maybe feel bad for them and they would send in some food. They would secretly, they would send in some food to them. There was one man he was not Muslim. He would put on a camel, he would load it with some supplies, with some food, and he would let the camel go in towards the area that they were in and leave it there. They would eat from the food. They would, in the end, sacrifice the camel and utilize its meat. And every once in a while, maybe once every few weeks or months, someone would send something in for them so that they could barely get by and barely be able to survive. And during these times, any time that foreign people would come into the land, maybe to come and try to trade because they're not part of the treaty, Abu Jahl would offer double whatever the Banu Hashim could give them so that they wouldn't trade with them. So whatever they were going to try to buy or barter with them, Abu Jahl would give them double that amount so that they would be completely cut off. So during this time, people would still come for Hajj. This was, again, before the time of Islam, when people were still making Hajj and still worshiping idols. And the Prophet ﷺ, he would still call people to Islam during this time. So this boycott now lasted for years. And so what ended this boycott? There was a couple things that ended it. So first of all, the Prophet ﷺ made dua against the people who made the boycott. He said, "Oh Allah, send a famine on them like the famine of the time of Yusuf." And you remember we did the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. And so the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, they had this famine that they had. And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we know that the story of Yusuf was revealed during the time of this boycott, during these harsh times. And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made dua, "Oh Allah, send a famine on them like the famine of Yusuf alayhi salam." And so this famine came upon them, and it became so bad for the people of Mecca. It became so hard on them, and the people of Mecca, they realized that this famine was because of the dua of the Prophet ﷺ, even though they didn't believe in him as the Prophet. So they sent someone to try to make things right with the Prophet ﷺ. And so some of the Quraysh, another thing, some of the Quraysh who were more kind and soft-hearted, and they didn't like that they were suffering and starving like this, even though they weren't Muslims and they weren't supportive of them, they just started to feel bad. And so this is the other big thing that stopped the boycott. They decided that they're going to do something to end the boycott. So several of them got together, maybe 6, 7, 8 people got together, and they knew that they were sympathetic to the Prophet ﷺ and those who were with him, and for the trials that they were going through and the starvation that they were going through and the boycott. So they came up with a plan. And so in this plan, they said that when the tribes get together, when they gather, they would go to the Kaaba and they would stand amongst these tribes during one of their meetings. And so here's what they did. They went to the Kaaba, and one of them, during this big meeting and gathering of the tribes, one of them stood up And he said, how long are we going to starve our own families to death? Meaning these ties of kinship were still there. These ties of family were still there. So look how brave he was. He stood up against them. He said, how long are we going to starve our own families? And so Abu Jahl stood up. He said, who do you think you are? We all agreed to this. We all agreed we're going to do this. And so another one stood up. This is again from the people who came to this agreement. Another one stood up. He said, no, we didn't agree to this. You agreed to this. This was your idea. And Abu Jahl said, no, we had a meeting. We all agreed to this. So then another one stood up from somewhere else. He said, no. He said, we didn't agree to this. You forced this on us. And another one stood up from somewhere else. So they scattered around to make it seem like the tides had changed, that everyone was disagreeing with Abu Jahl. And no one came to stand up and stand by the side of Abu Jahl. And so Abu Jahl, he said, this is a plan that you all came up with. And he was right. It was a plan that they came up with, but nobody supported him. So then the Prophet ﷺ, he came to his uncle, Abu Talib. And he said, so listen to this. He said, oh, my uncle, Allah has informed me that, you remember the treaty that they locked up in the Kaaba? He said, oh, my uncle, Allah has informed me that the treaty that they wrote in the Kaaba has been eaten up by insects, except for a small phrase on that treaty that said, Bismika Allahum, in the name of Allah. And so Abu Talib, of course, he's not Muslim, but he says, are you sure about this? Because I'm about to go make this claim. Now I'm going to go and say something, and I'm going to put everything on. I'm going to put it all on the line because of what you're saying. And of course, so this treaty, it's locked up in the Kaaba. Nobody's seen it. It's sealed and it's in a cloth. So it's sealed up. It's closed up in a cloth. The Prophet ﷺ said, Allah has informed me of this. So Abu Talib gathered the Banu Hashim, gathered others from Banu Hashim, and people who weren't Muslim, and they marched to the Kaaba. And now they're going to put it all on the line because of what the Prophet ﷺ told him. So Abu Talib said, he gathered all the people and the tribes that were boycotting. And he said, let us bring out this treaty and see, maybe we can reach a deal together. So they're thinking, okay, so maybe we're going to come up with a deal. Maybe Abu Talib is now going to hand over Muhammad to us, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they go, and Abu Talib says, now take out this treaty. So they go and take out this treaty. And now this treaty is still wrapped up. It's wrapped up in a cloth. And so Abu Talib says to them, before they open up this cloth, he says, my nephew has informed me that his Lord has told him that the treaty no longer exists and it has all been eaten except for the phrase, Bismika Allahum. So my challenge to you, before you open this cloth, before you look at the treaty, my challenge to you is this. If that's the case, and he's right, then let's end this and return to Mecca. And if it's wrong, if it's not true, then I will hand him over to you. So they say, of course. How would he know anything like this? It's locked up. So they open the cloth to see what's inside the cloth. And maybe we should stop here and share the story next time. Should we stop here? Okay, my kids are saying they don't want to stop here. Maybe we'll finish and tell you what happened. Don't have any doubt in the Prophet ﷺ. Of course, when they opened the cloth, it was just as the Prophet ﷺ had said. Indeed, it had been eaten by the insects. And they became so upset. They said, this must have been some magic that he did. He must have done some magic. But they gave their word, and now the boycott was done. So inshallah, we're going to wrap up with one more thing. Soon after they went back to Mecca, 3 calamities happened to the Prophet ﷺ. 3 calamities. And this is why this is known as the year of sorrow. So we wanted to talk about the boycott and the year of sorrow. And this is part of the warning that Waraq ibn Nawfal gave to the Prophet ﷺ. So 3 calamities happened to the Prophet. Number 1, about 6 weeks or so, a month and a half after they returned to Mecca, the Prophet ﷺ's uncle, Abu Talib, became very sick. And he was on his deathbed and he said, "Oh, Abu Talib, just say La ilaha illallah so I have something that I can stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with." And Abu Talib, his beloved uncle who stood by him, who protected him, was just about to say it, but who was with him? Abu Jahl and Abdullah ibn Abi Umayyah were with him. And as Abu Talib was about to say it, they said, "Oh, Abu Talib, are you going to leave the religion of your fathers?" And they kept going back and forth until he died without having taken his shahada, without having saying La ilaha illallah. This was very hurtful for the Prophet ﷺ because he loved his uncle very much. The second thing, the second tragedy, which made this the year of sorrow for the Prophet ﷺ, was the death of his wife Khadija radiallahu anha. We know that she stood by his side during the most difficult times. And she got sick throughout the years of the boycott because of the malnourishment that she went through. And before she died, Jibreel alayhi salam descended from the 7th heaven with a message for Khadija. And he said to the Prophet ﷺ, "Verily Allah sends his salams to Khadija." Can you imagine this? That he's saying Salamu alaykum to Khadija. And he says, and he gives her the glad tidings of a palace in Jannah made of pearls. And there's no difficulties on her or hardships. All the pain and suffering that she went through, there will be no hardships and difficulties in Jannah. Of course, she's just about to die. She's going to see her palace in Jannah, but this message is so we understand the status of Khadija radiallahu anha, the one who stood by the Prophet ﷺ. You know, Aisha radiallahu anha, one time she became jealous of how much the Prophet ﷺ loved Khadija. And Aisha radiallahu anha, she became the wife of the Prophet ﷺ after that. So one time he was remembering Khadija and she said, you still remember Khadija? You still remember this old woman when Allah has given you better than her? And the Prophet ﷺ said, by Allah, Allah has not given me better than her. She stood by me when no one else stood by me. She supported me when nobody else supported me. She was always there for me, and Allah gave me offspring from her. Allah gave me children from her. And so Aisha radiallahu anha, she apologized for making a comment like that. But look at how much the Prophet ﷺ loved her and missed her and respected her. And she was there with him from the very beginning. And the third thing, the third incident that made this the year of sorrow, inshallah, we will get into on Friday. Okay, I know you're saying don't stop now, but inshallah on Friday, or my kids are at least saying don't stop, but inshallah on Friday, we will get into the third incident so we can finish off the year of sorrow. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Jazakallah khairan everyone for joining. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.